You run another interesting fund, Moritz. You also run the TEMA Obesity and Cardiometabolic ETF. That's a mouthful, folks. The symbol's HRTS if you want to look it up. And obviously this is weight loss drugs, GLP-1 drugs. I understand we're going to be getting some very important research updates soon on the efficacy of weight loss drugs. Can you tell us what's going on here?
Yeah, so every month new results come out, and the results are just staggering. Last month was Zealand's results, which is an upcoming player listed in Scandinavia. Next month we see the first 6 months of Zepbound data from Eli Lilly, because Zepbound was only approved in November 2023. The market
This is weight loss, right?
Weight loss drugs.
Okay, so we'll get updates on weight loss, and you're anticipating if the pattern occurs here, there'll be significant upside.
So current market estimates are about 150 billion by 2030. We think that's underestimated.
No, I'm talking about Lilly
Lilly specifically. So Zepbound, the first 6 months of Zepbound sales will come out in I think August 7th. Because remember, Zepbound's only very recently been on the market. Previously, obviously had Wegovy. We think that as there's a billion obese people in the world. Today, currently they expect 5% are currently treated. Market estimates look at the overall market as a $150 billion market. We think this is a $1 trillion opportunity. A billion people, 20% penetration, assuming pricing gets cut by 50%, that's $1 trillion of annual market in this just opportunity.
So only 5% are being treated for obesity.
That's what Novo Nordisk publicly estimates.
Yeah. That makes some sense to me.
And the obese population is expected to grow from 1 billion to 2 billion by 2035. So we think this is a big opportunity, especially if you start to look beyond weight loss. Imagine if these GLP-1s are used for cancer, for Alzheimer's, for Parkinson's. There's so many emerging applications where trial data is still early, but very promising.
Yeah, it really is kind of astonishing, like the early results here. I mean, are you anticipating that it's going to show not only that it is efficacious for weight loss, but that reduces heart disease, cancer risks? I mean, it's really a little bit of miraculous in a way.
The companies we track and the companies we invest in are looking not just at a weight loss approach, but also at other approaches. And we could see a world where the majority of the world's population takes a GLP-1, not just for weight loss, but for other disease groups.
And the argument is, of course, well, you have to take it forever, or you go off it, but isn't that true of everything? I mean, I'm on a statin drug, for example, to keep my cholesterol levels down. If I stop taking the statin drug, my cholesterol levels presumably will go up again, right? So I'm essentially taking a statin drug forever.
So for example, there's also an approach looking at genes. So we actually think genetic applications of obesity, where there's two companies, Regeneron and Amylin, which we invest in, which are really interesting. And these are looking at it like, what are the genes that predispose someone to obesity or to these kind of diseases? Ultimately, it's a trifecta of diseases: heart disease, diabetes, obesity. And understanding the linkage between the three is key as we look to how can we address these disease groups.
So this ETF you're running, I mean, obviously you think it's just Lilly and Novo Nordisk, because that's all we ever talk about, but this ETF is much bigger than that. You have very large positions in Amgen and Alnylam Pharmaceutical. Right. Tell me about Amgen and Alnylam and why they have, look, these weights are almost the same here.
So when we think about Alnylam, we think they're the leader in genetic approach to obesity. When we think about Amgen, we think about reducing the dosage. Some of the major issues with GLP-1s is the fact that they have side effects. They have muscle loss. They have injectables is not for everyone. So people are working oral. People are also working on reducing the frequency. You don't have to take it weekly, you can take it monthly. And in the case of Alnylam, you basically have a genetics approach, which fundamentally is a very different approach. So the industry is actually really looking beyond GLP-1 drugs. Although the industry today is manufacturing GLP-1 drugs, the innovation is looking beyond GLP-1 in order to offer better experiences to patients. The goal is, how can you improve the lives of over 1 billion patients today that live with obesity?
Yeah, and Amgen too?
Amgen's focusing on lower dosage. So right now, if you have to take it every week, especially if it's an injectable, it's quite invasive. That can become an oral, so Viking is a leader in oral.
And how likely is it to get oral? Everyone I know is using injectables, right?
Correct, but oral is actually quite advanced. So Viking is some of the more advanced trial data. Lilly has an advanced trial. But this is hard. Pfizer, for example, had a product in trial and that failed. So that's why biotech investing is very hard.
And what is it about the difference between just injectables versus oral? Injectables obviously is efficacious. Oral isn't yet.
So the goal is, like, can you get the same efficacy as with oral as you can with injectables? And also, is it deemed to actually be safe?
Right.
Like, the reality, the trial data is still earlier.
Well, obviously there's a problem with ingesting in the gut.
Correct.
Absorbing the drugs in the wrong way, so it's not efficacious. That's the problem.
Correct. So how do you get the same efficacy or similar efficacy? Because if you think like efficacy, bariatric surgery, which is where we came from, is 50 to 30% weight loss. Weight loss drugs today are basically in the higher limit, 15 to 20%. Lilly's triple G approach may be 25%. The question is, if you do oral, can you still get to that double-digit efficacy? And that's where the trial data is really focused on. So far, we're high single-digit. We're optimistic you could get this double-digit.
And a lot of people we hear anecdotally talk about compounding drugs. They seem to be buying cheaper versions of these drugs, and they call it compounding. Do we know if these are, first off, efficacious, or are they safe?
So we don't know if they're safe. I mean, there's also been rumors around HIMSS, around that they've been selling drugs that have not been authorized. The reality, this is a short-term opportunity because there's a legislation that allows, when there's a drug in short supply is a key issue with GLP-1 drugs, you can basically reformulate, you can manufacture outside the patent. That's an approach HIMSS is taking. We don't own HIMSS. HIMSS is a distributor. We don't believe that's core to what we think is the thesis today of GLP-1 and non-GLP-1 drugs addressing the cardiometabolic obesity GLP-1 space.
So let's go back to the election. Will the election have any impact on drug pricing or on weight loss drugs?
So there's historically been two camps. Biden's frankly been more lenient, but Trump was quite heavy-handed on drug pricing. Drug pricing is a real issue. If there's two issues today, it's supply, which is being sold through more factories or through conversion of factories, M&A, and two, pricing, affordability. But we see affordability actually already improving, and we see steps of making it also available within Medicare plans. There was a bill passed through the House last week, which now goes to the upper house, which will basically expand the coverage of Medicare for weight loss drugs. So we see that this is only going to expand. Yeah. The cost to society is so large that people want to make it more affordable.
It is kind of staggering when you consider, is it not in the benefit of insurance companies and medical companies to introduce these drugs because you're going to reduce the incidence of other kinds of diseases, obesity and diabetes? Is that not in the long-term interest of the health?
We would definitely support that view. There's short-term some concerns about whether people abuse it, whether people who don't need it or use it for other reasons would take the drugs. But our view is that long-term, the insurers should actually be aligned with the patients and offering better outcomes to patients and extending the supply of these medications. So we think that there's a lot of sensitivity around pricing. For example, the Novo Nordisk CEO is going to testify in front of the Senate in early September about drug pricing. But we think that drug pricing will come down.
Right.
And even
so what are we talking now? $700 a month for some of these drugs?
I think they're talking, well, it depends. Like if you think about the upfront price, it's about $12,000 a year, so $1,000 a month. But that's also reduced if you look at what is covered by insurance. If we just think about like the headline price before insurance coverage, we think that will come down. We could see drug pricing come down from $12,000 to maybe $6,000 a year. So maybe $500 a month.
And how fast?
We think maybe in the next 2 to 3 years. I think the reality is that there's a billion people today. There's such demand. Even if pricing goes down 50%, we still think this is a big opportunity. And when we think about the $1 trillion market cap,
you could buy compounded versions of some of these drugs now for under $500.
But that's very short term. So that's only a short term loophole in the regulation. The real concern is patents. So in China, the patent expires in 2 years. In Europe, the patent expires in 6 years or 7 years. And in the US, the patent expires in 8 years, 2032. So the real question is, how much of the market can you access before the patent expires? We don't see any likelihood of the patent being extended. If anything, in China, the patent may actually be shortened.
Yeah, different way of looking at the whole thing. Were you going to say something?
Well, I can't think of a theme or an ETF where the knock-on effects are so substantial, potentially substantial, right? I lose weight, I'm not going to need a healthcare equipment company because I'm not getting an operation done. I'm not going to go buy certain fast foods, perhaps, right? That's what starts to impact consumer discretionary. And then I also need to buy a new wardrobe. So that impacts discretionary in another route.
And I'm not buying Hershey candy.
Yeah, and so now you're talking about consumer staples. So the potential knock-on effects of these companies, and this ETFs in particular, is really substantial.
But it's even more substantial. They're not just weight loss drugs. I mean, the drugs seem to reduce desire, particularly in more extreme cases in general. So not just eating, but drinking. And not just drinking, but even gambling heavy or sex addiction. It seems to reduce desire in compulsive behaviors in general. Aren't there not preliminary indications of that?
That is the preliminary indications, and that's why we think this drug or this approach could actually have a much wider audience, a much wider market than we currently see, which is just where it started obviously was diabetes, which has now moved obviously to weight loss. But we see that the market vastly underestimated given the applications we see beyond just weight loss, where the data is still early but promising. And we think that in the next 2 to 3 years,
This would scare the hell out of the gambling industry, for example, and scare the hell out of the sex toy business. Or what? I know I'm being a little glib here, but
we could see this being
seriously,
one of
if you draw the tendons the way you do,
you don't go to a casino, you're not going to the restaurants of the casino.
Yeah.
Right, a whole chain reaction.
Holy
you're
shit.
not staying in the hotel.
This could be one of the more transformative experiences for patients or for everyday people, especially if this basically becomes like a drug that people take every day over time.
Well, when you talk about that trifecta, you talk about the diabetes and heart disease. What was the third one?
And obesity.
And obesity. My heavens, I mean, that attacks all three of them.
Heart disease is the biggest killer in the world today, more than cancer. And in reality, that the correlation between the three is very close. And that's why when we think about the heart ETF, it focuses on the comorbidities. So not only just do you address GLP-1 or weight loss, but also do you address diabetes. We actually look at like the different companies and also the different players that affect in that trifecta.
So just go back to what we talked before with your earlier, the onshoring drug. Why can't we get exposure just by using healthcare? There's the XLV is the S&P healthcare ETF. That's broad healthcare. There's a IBB, which is a biotech ETF. Is it the same answer? You
Similar.
prefer
I mean, XLV, you're getting managed care in there. You're getting equipment and services. Novo Nordisk is not even in the XLV. Right? That's a big player here. And then IBB, I don't have the sheet in front of me. I don't even think Lilly's in that. Maybe I'm wrong because Lilly's technically classified as pharma, and
It's
that's
probably
biotech.
not a biotech. No.
So you can get biotech exposure, but if you're looking for the expertise on which company maybe have the next new drug, IBB is going to be way at the bottom of the list because it's probably a micro-cap stock. So that's where the active expertise can come in for this idea.
Same thing there?
Yeah, I mean, biotech is a difficult place to invest. Majority of the returns come from the minority of companies. There's two big players in the room today.
It's been a disaster. I've been following this for 20 years. I cannot figure out. I have no idea how to invest in biotech
Which
at
is
all,
why-
other than owning an ETF.
It's a lotto ticket.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Which is why indices have been
And look what
disappointing.
happened to Allen Island last week. They had a heart disease drug. The stock went through the roof.
Correct.
Out of nowhere.
You need active expertise to manage risk. So when I think about active in biotech, it's to manage risk. This is a risky space. It's a space that's difficult to make money. Indices are challenged.
Yeah.
So you need experience, you need process, and also you need to have been in this industry for a while to do this.
Yeah.